Hello everyone! Natalia Batista here. Nice to meet you again, and thank you so much for the comments and response on my latest video. So many good points and thoughts you got. Seems like you've been thinking a lot about this comic making thing, huh? I hope this video, and some other videos I'm gonna make, will help you out in your work with making your comic or manga. Or maybe it will start up a conversation and give you more thoughts on how to do comics. I want to do a series of videos on how to do storytelling for manga and comics. This first video will be about how to come up with an idea and how to know if it's good enough to pursue. I think I'll make this video and some other videos more like a step-by-step video, so it will be easy for all you to follow. Step 1. The first idea. This first idea can come to you in many different ways. Some of us are more inclined to draw. We might come up with an idea by drawing a picture. Or sometimes we draw a character and think it's really funny and interesting, so we come up with stories about this character. Doesn't that sound familiar? This is a good way to start the idea process. But remember to not put too many ideas into the character at once, because that would make it harder later on to make a story about this character. It's much better to make the character like a symbol or a marker for something that you care about. Just like I said in my previous video, it's important to make the story personal. So, why not make this character kind of like a representation of you? That doesn't mean it has to be you, or look like you, or have the same gender like you. As long as it's something that represents you. It doesn't even have to be human, it can be an alien or a dog. But give the character personality traits that ties into who you are. Or give the character a backstory that resembles something that you've been through. Our personalities are formed by what we go through and what we experience in life. Like, if you know how much of a change it is for your personality to having to move from one school to another, then why not do that to your own character? How would the character react? Would they get more shy or reclusive even? Or maybe the character becomes more thick-skinned and hard and strong, just to alienate people and not get hurt again. See the event in the character's life as a cause and effect. I'll make a video about how to build your character, so don't worry, you don't have to go through all that now. At this point, just give the character a basic personality and some interests. You'll be able to develop the character into a full person later on as we work with this. Others of us are more into writing or coming up with a concept and deal with the characters later on. When you come up with a concept, it can be just an idea. Maybe it sounds interesting or exciting. Perhaps it even sounds unique, something like you haven't heard it before or haven't seen it before in a manga or comic. That concept can be a really good start for a story. But how do we know that this is the case? One of my teachers gave me a good tip that I still follow today. He said he never wrote down his ideas. Instead, he let the brain do the selection process on its own. An idea can be really good, but if it doesn't come back to you, maybe it wasn't your story to tell. This ties into the make the story personal tip that I gave in my previous video. If the idea was really unique and awesome, but had nothing to do with your experience or your life, then maybe it wasn't your story and maybe someone else should do it instead. So, if the idea returns to you, write it down. Now, this might sound weird to some of you, but I kinda see comic making as one kind of exorcism actually. The characters and ideas are like demons that haunt your head until you make a comic about them and therefore drive them out of your body. Ooh. Kinda weird, huh? So this is how I think you should tackle your good ideas and your characters that you've been creating. If they return to you now and through a longer time, at least a couple of weeks or maybe even several years, then that is something you have to tell in a story or in a comic. But if they don't return, let them rest. Maybe forever. They might never come back to you. I have some ideas that have been haunting me for 10 years now, and I know at some point I need to make them. Probably because they're connected to me in a subconscious way that maybe I not even understand at this point. I say this as a recommendation, because when you start working on your comic, you might lose the passion unless the story is really connected to you in a deeper way. Or it might feel like you don't have the right experience or knowledge you need to know to do the comic. Sure, you can do some research, but there's some things that you can't research your way to. For example, the experience of living in another culture that you haven't experienced. Think carefully before you go into this kind of project. Maybe the story requires some counseling or help from someone who has been in that culture and can give you guidance on the way. Now, let's say you have created your idea in your head or started drawing your characters. Now it's time to write down the idea. Step 2 in forming the idea is writing a synopsis. A synopsis is kind of like a summary of the whole story, even the ending, preferably with a maximum of 5 to 10 sentences, all in all. even including the ending part. It's very important it's both the beginning, the middle and the end. That way you get a precise outline with a focus in the story. And like I said in my previous video, don't forget the ending. It's important. Yes, you have to know the ending at this point, or at least have some alternative endings that you could use, but depending on how the story changes throughout the working process. You should also at this point be able to summarize the whole story in one sales pitch sentence. This is a very useful thing to do, first of all for you, so you know where the focus of the story is, but also for others. So if they ask you, what is your story about? You can give them a precise and interesting answer. Not start talking about your character's favorite food or the childhood traumas they have, or the architecture and language of the world that you've created. They don't want to know that at this point. It's much better to give them one sentence that is interesting enough that they will ask questions. Like if we take Sword Prince of Maltea, my manga, as an example. This story can actually be summarized by one sentence. This is a gender-flipped manga in a fairytale world where the queens rule and the princess is rescuing the prince. This sentence is interesting enough that it makes people want to read it. I have practiced this sales pitch sentence on several different people and I find it very effective. So I highly recommend you to do it too. This is actually all I think you should need at this point. My next video will build on this video and guide you in the next step in actually developing your idea into a full-blown story. Thank you so much for watching. Bye bye!